I'm going to show you everything you need to know to succeed and play the PoJ Tempest Rush Monk build for Season 32 in Diablo 3. First off, looking at the skills then, we're of course taking Tempest Rush. This is one of the main abilities in this build, the other one being Sweeping Wind, and this is from the Patterns of Justice gear set, which we'll look at in a minute. Tempest Rush then, we're going to charge through our enemies, dealing cold damage to everything in our path, and when we stop channeling it, we're going to actually cause an icy blast that's more powerful the longer we channel. On Sweeping Wind then, we're going to surround ourselves in a holy vortex for 6 seconds that damages nearby enemies, and critical hits are going to intensify that vortex. Now, we're going to gain Spirit whenever the vortex is at 3 or more stacks. Spirit is our main resource. And we're actually going to get all runes from Sweeping Wind, making it a lot more powerful. That is from, of course, the Patterns of Justice gear set. Looking at some defensives, we have Serenity, become immune to all attacks and control effects for 4 seconds, and it's on a 16-second cooldown. We've got Epiphany, have an Epiphany, increasing your spirit regeneration, again, our main resource, per second, and enabling your melee attacks to instantly dash to your target for 15 seconds, so you can just zoom straight to your target with all your melee attacks, rather than having to actually, walk there yourself, and infusing yourself with sand, reducing damage taken as well from the rune on here. Blinding Flash, blinding all nearby enemies for 3 seconds. You deal increased damage for a short duration after using it, so we can use this on cooldown to keep our damage up. And then we've got for our Mantra of Salvation. If you're new to monks, you get to choose one of many mantras. We're going with Salvation. You activate it so that you and nearby allies, I don't know what my accent done then, gain greatly increased resistances to all elements. The passive on here is that you and allies gain increased resistance to all elements and increased dodge chance as well. Looking at the passive skills we've got, there's the Guardian's Path. While dual wielding, which we will be doing of course, you gain a 35% chance of dodging incoming attacks. While using a two-handed weapon, all spirit regeneration is increased by 15%. Harmony, 40% of your single elemental resistances from items instead increases your resistance to all elements. Seize the Initiative, dealing damage to enemies above 75% health increases your attack speed by 30% for 4 seconds. So when we're going into fights, this is going to be great. And Beacon of Yahar, reducing all cooldowns by 20%. So again, the few defensives and bits and bobs here. Blinding Flash, increasing damage done after we use it and blinding our enemies. Tempest Rush, charging through enemies in our path, and then we get to channel a big icy blast. And Sweeping Wind, which we're going to get all runes from a big nasty vortex. Now we're going to look at the gear, the gems, and also Kunai's Cube and how we're going to be using them in Season 32. So, let's start off with what gems we're going to be using. As you can see on the weapons, I'm going with emeralds. The reason I love these is for that big old juicy crit damage. And I do want to get a bit of survivability in there, and I always, especially at the higher levels, like to go for more and more diamonds for resistances to all elements. You can take these out and put in some different gems to get more power early on, and then slowly move them over to diamonds as you get higher and higher into the rifts and you feel you need them. Generally, that's how I tend to do it. It's usually about Greater Rift 100, I start pushing these over to diamonds. In the head, I do like to put a yellow gem, just so that to topaz, can't remember the name of it, so that we can reduce our resource costs. However, for the legendary gems, I like to go for Taeguk, gaining 8% increased damage for 1.5 seconds when you spend resource on a channeled skill, and that can stack, remember, so a lot of extra damage there. Then we've got the Molten Wildebeest's Gizzard, regenerating life per second. And after not taking damage, we also gain an Absorb Shield. This just really helps keep my health up. And then on the neck, I like to, it doesn't matter where it goes, but on the neck I'm using Bane of the Trapped here. And I use this on a lot of my builds. Basically, what it does is you do extra damage to anything that is movement impaired. But the same gen also actually gives them movement impairment, meaning it actually has a symbiotic relationship with itself, meaning it is fantastic in a lot of builds. On the head, the hands, the shoulders, the chest, and the legs, of course, we are going for the Justice set, which underpins this build. 2-set bonus, Sweeping Wind gains the effect of every single rune, and movement speed is increased by 5% for each stack of Sweeping Wind. Attacking with Tempest Rush reduces your damage taken by 50% and increases spirit regen by 50. And then the 6-set bonus, of course, the most exciting bit, means that hitting with Tempest Rush while Sweeping Wind is active will increase the size of Sweeping Wind and also increase all damage dealt by 2 billion million trillion %. Wowee, indeed. In Kanai's Cube, then, now we've got the main set out of the way, I like the Ring of Royal Grandeur. You will see, of course, that we're only using 5 pieces of the Justice set, the Patterns of Justice set. That is because we're using the Ring of Royal Grandeur, reducing how many set pieces we need to get that 6-set bonus. While we're here, I like to go for the Mantle of Channeling on the armor slot. While channeling Tempest Rush, we deal 25% increased damage and take 25% reduced damage. Don't worry about all the other spells on there, they are for other classes. And then lastly, it's balance in the weapon. The damage of Tempest Rush is increased by 600%, and when your Tempest Rush hits 3 or fewer enemies, it gains 100% critical strike chance. Really great for Rift Guardians then. Going on to what Season 32 offers, which is, of course, the ethereal weapons, I like to go for the Jade Talon. On the waist and feet, I want to put Crackling Crimsons on. Again, we can get the free set bonus with only 2 items because of the Ring of Royal Grandeur on here. And lastly, for our accessories, the Obsidian Ring of the Zodiac, reducing the remaining cooldown of one of your skills by 1 second when you hit with a resource spending attack. Unity, where all damage taken is split between the wearers of the item. And lastly, my favourite necklace of all, Squirt's Necklace. While not taking damage, your damage dealt is increased and damage taken is also increased as well. A bit less survivability there, but with things like the Molten Wildebeest's Gizzard, we are going to offset that, especially with the diamond gems we're putting in as well. We're going to take the Enchantress as our follower. A few key things we want to put on her is going to be as many intelligence stats and gems as possible, because her skills synergize off the more intelligence she has. Put on Smoking Furball, where basically she can't die and therefore her abilities will never be, not available. We're going to go for the Temporal Pulse, slowing enemies, again, increasing damage from one of the legendary gems we put on. Amplification, increasing your static elemental damage bonuses by 5%, again, based on the Enchantress's intelligence. Powered Shield, this is some survivability for us both. And then Focused Mind, it's an aura that increases attack speed for you and the Enchantress, again, based on her intelligence. Regarding slows, again, we can actually use Thunder Fury, Blessed Blade of the Windseeker. This is going to add to 5 targets, speed reduction and lightning damage. We've got a few Emanates items, which means it's going to affect both the Enchantress and you, even though they're on the Enchantress. Nemesis Braces on here. Shrines are going to spawn enemy champion. This means that we can speed farm better because they're going to drop the orbs that we get to complete our rifts. The Flavour of Time, where pylon effects last twice as long. Go for Kane's Insight on the legs and head, if you can, increasing her attack speed. Homing pads on the shoulders basically means when you're casting your town portal, you won't be interrupted by damage, and therefore, especially if you're playing hardcore, or even if you're not, it's going to be easier to get back to town when you need to, especially in times of great danger, if you are playing on hardcore, for instance, and it's also going to reduce your damage taken when channeling your town portal as well. Regarding what stats we're actually going to want, first of all, to keep our Epiphany off cooldown as much as possible, we want to try and stack cooldown reduction to 55%. After that, we're going to try and get some life on hit for survivability, resistances to all elements, not just one, try and get all resistances on them as much as possible for more survivability. Regarding offensive stats, the main things we want is cold damage, and then crit chance and damage, and also some area of effect damage as well. There is, of course, a lot of other stats that are useful, but these are the main 5, 6, 7, however many I've put in here, that I think you should try and focus on if you can. Regarding Paragon points then, what priority do we want to get these in? Well, first of all, movement speed. Then we actually want as much maximum spirit as we can. Then it's going to be dexterity and then vitality as you need it for more survivability. On offensive then, cooldown reduction, again, we're trying to get to that 55% for Epiphany. If you can't remember what Epiphany is, have an Epiphany increasing your spirit regeneration per second, enabling your melee attacks to instantly dash to your target 15 seconds. Infuse yourself with sand, reducing damage taken as well. We want to try and keep this off cooldown as much as possible. After that, it will be attack speed. Of course, monks do really well on this. And then it's going to be crit chance, and then lastly, damage. On defense stats then, it's going to be all resistances, like I've previously said. We want to stack this as much as we can. Life percent, then armor, and and then life regeneration. And finally, on utility, we're going to go for area damage. Like I said on the stat priorities, that's one of our core offensives that we want to try and get. Then it'll be resource cost reduction to help our spirit, well, not regeneration, but reduction of how much we're using, life per hit, and lastly, gold pickup radius. But of course, after all that, how are we actually going to put this all together and play the build? So when we do actually enter a rift, we want to use our sweeping wind, and then after that we want to use our epiphany on cooldown every 15 seconds if we can. Now, if you are at the point where of course you aren't at the 55% cooldown reduction yet, we can use serenity in its place to become immune to all attacks, etc. where needed. This is on a much shorter cooldown, so when we can't get epiphany off like here, because I haven't got the full set on as I'm showing you this video, we can use serenity in its place for defensives. We can use our mantra of salvation on cooldown as well every few seconds. As you can see here, it takes about 3 seconds to come off. This is going to give us all of that resist that we want. We don't actually care too much about the spirit regeneration, but the resists we get on here is really, really useful for defensives. Don't forget to use your blinding flash, as it is actually going to increase the damage we are doing. And of course, we have our Tempest Rush here, as you can see, which we're going to use with our sweeping wind. And that is pretty much the build. Don't forget, of course, to then synergize your sweeping wind with your Tempest Rush for the set bonus that we have on here. It's a really fun build. It has a lot of survivability built into it with all these cooldowns that we're kind of cycling. And I think it's a really fun build. It is S tier for monks this season, and it is the best build you're gonna get if you would like to play monk. If you would like to see me do other builds, please do let me know in the comments below. This is a new channel, so please do subscribe and leave a thumbs up if you do enjoy the video. I will be doing also other Diablo games like 4 and Immortal when the new seasons, well, the new season for Immortal's already out actually, but when the new Diablo Season 4 comes out, I will be doing that as well. If you want to see other builds, let me know. You can also join my Discord or my Patreon if you'd like to see more behind the scenes or chat with the community and play Diablo 3 or 4 with others. I, of course, love it myself. And you can click this playlist here if you would actually like to see more builds from Season 31.